This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Good evening. This is your host, Ray, on the Late Late Show this very late Monday. Today we are celebrating Pride Month by discussing how schools can celebrate, or maybe at least start to begin to recognize Pride Month within schools to make sure all of our students are celebrating diversity and feeling safe and included.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Evening. Thank you for listening to our live listeners. I know there is some football happening right now, and I watch every France game religiously. So this hurts me slightly, but I am glad to be here. I am glad, and I'm fully invested. I do not have the match on in the background like I thought I might have to. I'm here. I am present. I am fully focused, and I'm going to give it my all, because this is. I feel like I say this every other week, but this is a very important topic, and it's obviously quite personal to me as well. So we're talking about how schools should celebrate Pride Month, how they can celebrate Pride Month, what that might look like for a school that maybe hasn't celebrated Pride Month in any capacity before, some of the potential barriers to doing so, particularly in our current climate, where it feels like we are regressing at a tragic pace. And there have been some recent developments regarding certain dioceses in a certain Midland city that are determined to kind of put things even further back for all of us and for our students. So we'll be talking about that a little bit more later. So my own personal experience of this particular topic is wildly varied. I have worked at a school that was, I would go as far to say, hostile. I have worked at a school that was incredibly accommodating and loving and welcoming and open and inclusive and beautiful. But even within that, it absolutely had its problems. Absolutely had its problems. And there, when we started our first Pride group and started to run events, and there was a CPD session for staff that the Pride group led entirely by the students, supported by staff, but entirely by the students. There was absolutely some pushback from some members of staff. And there was pushback from parents as well, as you might expect. But because we had a supportive senior management team, it was okay, and we made it work. But then I left, and I'm not entirely sure how things continued in my absence. And I'm currently at a school where we have a Pride group, but there's no recognition of Pride Month itself, so to speak. There's no kind of celebration of that. So, but I only started there in September, so I'm still trying to get the lay of the land and figure out exactly what's going on in that regard. So it's been an interesting journey from my perspective. And our guest tonight, Neil Danda, he is an assistant head teacher in a school in East London, I think, that's actually quite similar in intake, in demographics, I think, to a couple of the schools that I've worked in. So it'll be interesting to hear all of the wonderful things that he has been up to. And I asked him to come on the show because we're in at least one, I think, possibly more than one, at least one, union group, LGBT union members group on WhatsApp, and we've been to some conferences and so on, but we've never actually had a conversation about this. I don't think we've ever actually met, so we've just been like seeing each other, seeing posts and comments and things. Or at least I've been watching him because he posted some wonderful things that his students had done in celebration of Pride Month this year. So I thought it would be excellent to have him on and to share that journey, how that came to be so fabulous, and what his experiences in that arena are. So, Neil, are you there?
I am here, yes.
Oh, beautiful. Always that moment of tension. Could you please introduce yourself and give us a bit about your background and your context for our listeners, please?
Sure. First, thanks for having me on, Ray.
Thank you for coming.
No problem. So my current role, as you said before, is assistant head teacher in a local authority secondary school, 11 to 16 in East London. I also teach modern languages. I'm on the London LGBT plus organising forum for the National Education Union. So that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. I've worked in 3 schools in London. And it's always been important to me, particularly in the last 10 to 15 years or so, to be a prominent voice in the school, but also to bring in other colleagues on developing a more inclusive education for our pupils.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. I think it's kind of easy for some of us to find that passion and to realize how important it is when we've been affected by those things ourselves personally. But obviously, one person or a few individuals cannot a whole movement make. So it is. I'm so glad that you've been able to do what you've been able to do. It looked absolutely amazing, and I'm really interested to hear. Let's let's start at the beginning, I guess, because you sent to this aforementioned WhatsApp group. You sent some pictures of what looked like a bustling fair full of rainbow flags and different booths and different stalls. So what was that event that happened this year that you shared with us, and how did you get your Pride celebrations in school to that point?
Right. Okay. So I'll come on to that in a second. I'm gonna start with kind of what has driven that for me from the beginning, really, and
Yeah, please
my
do.
personal experience and kind of what motivates me and why I think this is important. So all
Well,
of
that is the beginning. That
yeah,
is the beginning.
all of my primary and secondary school experience myself when I was growing up was under Section 28, so the Conservative
Mm-hmm.
Local Government Act that was enacted in 1988, which prohibited the promotion of homosexuality by schools and other kind of local authorities. So I grew up not hearing about anything positive to do with LGBT plus issues or any role models that I could look up to. So when I then went into teaching, I wanted, without this sounding kind of corny or cheesy,
Oh, go on.
I wanted to play even a small role in making sure that my pupils didn't have that experience. And the
Mm-hmm.
first school I worked in, which is way back now in 2006, just in the shadow of Section 28, because it was only repealed 5 years before that in England, was still kind of grappling with how to make their curriculum more inclusive and how teachers could teach that content, LGBT plus content in their lessons. So that was
Mm-hmm.
tricky at first, and then it gradually got better. My second school was, I went there for an interview. There were Stonewall posters up. I thought, okay, this is good. I can maybe start to work with people here, and that's where I developed a first pride group of pupils at that school in
Mm-hmm.
around 2014. But I want to stress, and I'll come on to the event you talked about in a minute, which happened last week. It can't happen on your own, and you've got to try and get other people on board, particularly given the kind of issues that you faced yourself that you talked about at the top of the program. You can set up sessions and CPD, but sometimes you're going to get pushback from people. And the more of you there are
Mm-hmm.
together that are singing from the same hymn sheet, the easier it
Mm-hmm.
can be to get these things through. So yeah, last week's event on Thursday, we usually do something in June in Pride Month, was actually this time mostly led by the pupils and other staff. And it was a celebration really. The kids, they produced a quiz which everybody took part in. There was a photo kind of rainbow art so they could have their pictures done. There was face paint. There was information about LGBT plus kind of public figures that they admired at the back of the room. So there's a mixture of a kind of educational space and really more a social space with balloons and fun, because that's what Pride's about, right? And it's important for
Yeah.
our people to have that safe space where they can express themselves and enjoy being around their friends and their teachers who support them. So yeah, it was a really good
Yeah.
event.
Yeah, it looked really, really lovely. So when you started that first Pride group at your first school, was that um, was that your idea? Did that come from the students? How did that come about?
So it was at my second school, and when I got there, they already had a program of assemblies. So during LGBT plus History Month in February, staff would deliver assemblies, and that was, they started to develop an inclusive curriculum. I was then, I remember I was on lunch duty, on lunchtime, obviously, and there were a group of pupils kind of gathering outside the room, and they were talking about LGBT plus issues and kind of, problems that they were facing at school and how they felt that, lessons could be a little bit more inclusive. So
Hmm.
I said to them, "Do you want to, one lunchtime, perhaps, come in and we can talk about it?" We went into a classroom, checked it was okay with management at the time. They said that's fine, and it kind of grew from there really. So it started as a space for them to talk about things, and then we developed that space to kind of have a little bit of a structure, kind of set some ground rules and how to respect each other. They came up with a name, which was Saga, sexuality and gender acceptance. I think it's
That was ours as well. Yeah.
yeah. I think it's also a kind of consciousness group, isn't it? In the
Yes, it
UK,
is. Yep. Yep.
distinguish between that. But it was good. It meant they could take ownership of it, starting with the name. And then what happened is the older pupils started to lead the group, and I was just facilitating them there, making sure everything was appropriate. So the kinds of things they did, they would develop posters, so visibility around school. They pushed for more staff to be wearing rainbow lanyards, so people, could feel that they could approach staff if they wanted to. They started to lead assemblies. We would discuss articles sometimes on kind of LGBT plus representation in sport, for example,
Hmm.
religion and relationship with that, and being LGBT plus. And having a social space too, as I said before, sometimes watch an age appropriate film, um, and things like that. So it's a kind of good mix of activities, and it made those pupils feel much more connected to the school and happy. And back to what I said at the beginning in terms of my motivation for doing it, I was just really, really pleased to be sharing that space with them and play my small part in doing that. Um, and then
Yeah,
it's
and
developed.
I think. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, just quickly on that, it's developed. That was me and one other member of staff kind of doing it together.
Okay.
At my current school, where I've been for 2 years, we've got about 12 members of staff, LGBT plus and non-LGBT plus, which is great. Who we're on a kind of rota, so they all kind of lead meetings with those pupils, which is even better, isn't it? Because the
Hmm.
kids don't see there's a wide range of staff who are on their side.
Yeah, and what you said just then about the students feeling much more connected to the school, I think that's such an important point because some of the resistance that I've come across and some of the kind of negative attitude toward pride groups and Pride Month celebrations or any kind of acknowledgement of any sort of, you know, gay things, rainbow flags, people who are just terrified by it. A lot of these people seem to have an idea that if you create a group or you provide a safe space for a particular group of pupils, that somehow means they're isolated or they're different or they're special. But it actually, if it's done properly, makes students, like helps young people realize that they actually do have a safe space here as well. This place, this institution, this school is for them as well. And it enhances that feeling of belonging and community, and it adds rather than it takes away. So I feel like that's a really key point that's often maybe missed, I think, when we're trying to set these things up, or unfortunately having to convince people that it's a good idea in the first place. It really just benefits students in every possible way. And I've never seen, I don't know about you, but I've never seen students, retreat into their LGBTQ plus group and refuse to engage with the rest of the school. That it just doesn't work that way.
No, exactly. And I
So
think
yeah.
that's right. School is about many things, isn't it? It's not just results, of course, important for the kids, but if they're
Hmm.
not happy in the first place, they're not going to perform well in the classroom. And I think the more we can do these kind of things, um, it benefits everybody. And you talked about having a supportive SLT earlier, which was great. And there are some schools and people who try these things who perhaps aren't as lucky as we are, and don't have such a supportive leadership team. And that's one thing you can use to convince them, isn't it? As well as the Equality Act 2010 and all of those things. It's that
Hmm.
we want our pupils to be happy, and well-being is top of the agenda for staff and pupils, and this contributes to that.
Yeah, and you don't have to have SLT that are coming from a particularly informed place for them to be sympathetic and understanding either. I remember when students came to me to ask about setting up a pride group at the positive school I spoke about. I went to the head teacher and just with an outline and said, like, here's my proposal. I know I don't have to run this past you if I want to start a club, but just considering everything, I just want to have a chat about it, and some of my ideas. And we went through everything, and she was really open to everything I was saying. And at one point, she stopped me and said, "So, can I just ask the Q, what does the Q stand for?" And I said, "Queer." She says, "Isn't that a bad word?" And she was so genuinely afraid of offending, and I had to explain, not anymore if you're reclaiming it, etc., etc., etc. But it was actually quite a cute moment of someone trying quite desperately to be a supportive ally, but actually not having the background or the information. It was cute.
The
So
training is important, isn't it? You talked about an inset earlier. Sorry to butt in
that's
there.
fine.
But that's another thing we did at my previous school is the pupils we kind of developed and devised a training slot. It's about 45 minutes for staff that the pupils led. And one of the things
Yeah.
was terminology at the beginning, and they went through all of the acronyms and the letters and what they mean. It was good for staff to hear that. They then created scenarios which could come up in school that they'd experienced, and asked staff to discuss them. And the pupils were the ones circulating, kind of helping staff to develop their arguments and reasons. So that was a really powerful thing to do if it's possible to do it. It's
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we did a similar thing at our school. So I've asked a few of our my former students who are now ancient. These children are not children anymore. They're university age. I think they're all 20, to join us. So I think one of them's gonna summarize kind of what we did from his perspective, so that I'm not so that I'm not constantly talking about this school that I no longer work at, because I feel like sometimes I'm a broken record, but also because I think it's important for listeners to hear from the students themselves, someone who's recently been through the system and actually experienced the things we've talked about, from their particular point of view. So we're going to hear from him, and from anyone else who wants to send in a text or to contribute to this. Please feel free to call in or drop a text in the box. We will hear from him in just a minute.
Imagine having your own instructional coach available 24/7. Now you can with the Teaching How-Tos platform. This highly personalised social platform empowers busy teachers to learn and apply evidence-based teaching techniques, either independently, working collaboratively with their peers, or with our new AI assistant. The platform features over 160 visual guides to teaching techniques, designed to help you quickly and easily implement high-impact practices that boost student engagement and improve learning outcomes. Join over 200 institutions worldwide that are elevating their teaching practices with the How-To app. No gurus, just practical support anytime you need it. Interested in finding out more? Visit teachinghowtos.com and register for our next webinar.
Empowering education with Easy for You, where innovation meets accessibility. Our subscription-based offering not only equips schools with cutting-edge devices, but revolutionizes the learning experience. By eliminating financial barriers, streamlining support, and embracing technology, we're not just providing tools. We're shaping a future where every student can thrive, unburdened by limitations. Easy for you, transforming education, one device at a time. Find out more at www.easyforyou.school.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading. Hi teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculum. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps for good. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
A lack of maintenance support is creating a two-tier higher education system, says a report in The Guardian. More than half of full-time students are working long hours in jobs to support themselves at university, according to a survey of UK undergraduates conducted by the Higher Education Policy Institute. The survey of 10,000 students found a record 56% had paid employment and were working an average of 14.5 hours per week. Experts said the lack of maintenance support was widening the divide between students who need to work to survive and their better-off peers who are free to concentrate on their studies. When combined with time spent attending lectures, classes and other study, students with part-time jobs are averaging a 48-hour working week, with some completing a 56-hour working week during term time. The average working time for adults in full-time jobs, according to the ONS, is just 36.6 hours per week. Higher Education Policy Institute's Rose Stevenson said the traditional model of higher education, with undergraduates studying full-time away from home, was becoming unattainable, and maintenance support would need to improve in order to support students with the cost of living. According to research, the cost of living crisis abruptly flipped the proportion of students mixing paid employment and full-time study. Before 2021, roughly 2/3 of students had no paid employment in term time. But this year, 56% of students said they had paid employment and were working longer hours than students in previous years. 3/4 said this was to meet their living costs, whilst 23% said it was to give financial support to families. 80% of students who had been in care were working in part-time jobs. The research also explored how working students completed their studies, with more being likely to use artificial intelligence programs and were more likely to view lectures online. Further details of the study and an additional report by the National Union of Students can be found online via the Guardian website. Money is also a feature in an article by Schools Week. It focuses on a response to a Conservative pledge to protect pupil funding in real terms. According to the Institute of Fiscal Studies, this could lead to the biggest school budget reduction for 50 years. The Conservative manifesto contains a promise to protect day-to-day school spending in real terms per pupil, but the IFS said this would work out as a £3.5 billion cut. This is because pupil numbers are due to fall by 400,000 by 2028. Meanwhile, Labour launched its manifesto with many media outlets covering its pledges on education. The National Education Union General Secretary welcomed the party's commitment to education, but said the proposals contained no indication that education cuts would be reversed. The NEU also expressed concern that Labour's pledge to recruit 6,500 teachers does not go far enough. The NASUWT union also commented on the recruitment pledge, saying it must go hand in hand with tackling the cause of the teacher retention crisis. Manifestos for all parties who have published them are available online. Away from the election, the BBC reports on an experiment undertaken by 10 teenagers from Salford. The teens swapped their smartphones for basic devices that could only make calls or send texts for a period of 5 days. The detox was run as part of a BBC project looking at the smartphone habits of young people. The report covers the positive impact the detox has, as well as the negatives. One of the participants dropped out after just 27 hours because not being online was really stressful. Some, however, found it liberating, as well as helping with sleep and engaging more with friends and family. Full details of the experiment and the responses of participants can be found on the BBC News website. Finally, as a follow-up on a story previously reported on Teachers Talk Radio News, Teesside University has announced it will help fund flights for Nigerian students hit by financial difficulties. Students from Nigeria were thrown off courses and ordered to leave the UK after a currency crisis left them struggling to pay tuition fees. The BBC Tees News website covered events and subsequent protests about the way students had been treated. This resulted in some intervention from the Nigerian government, but Teesside University has also told the BBC that it has re-enrolled some affected students and opened a travel fund, with a spokesperson saying, "We are working with a small group who do need to return to their home country and are opening an international relief fund to offer additional financial support for those unexpected travel costs." Some students have been told they can complete their studies from Nigeria or return to the UK at a later date to complete. Full details of the story can be found on the BBC News website, Teesside section. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News from Joe Fox.
I am so obsessed with that digital detox, that phone detox idea, and I want all of my students to be forcefully detoxified. I don't know. I was at Download Festival on Saturday and there was no signal the entire time. And for the first half an hour, it was frustrating. And then it was just beautiful and I loved it. And then I got the signal back and now I'm the same person I was before. Anyway, Dante, are you there?
I am here. Hello.
Excellent. Hello. So I have asked you on so you can explain to our listeners what we did at our nameless school and how that Pride group started and some of the things we did to celebrate Pride Month primarily, but also some of the other things we did. I'm not sure that CPD was during Pride Month. I think that was before. But anyway, why don't you start at the beginning? What started that group? Because you were one of 3 students that showed up in my office one day, very uncomfortable, very awkward, very nervous, asking in very hushed voices if we could possibly maybe just create some sort of LGBT group in the school. So tell us from your point of view how that happened.
So I think I was in a psychology class with my friend, and we just started talking about like LGBT things, and I think we started talking about how we were frustrated that like the school always talked about their values and being like, oh yeah, it's all about diversity and inclusion, all of that, but it never really felt like it included us as like LGBT people, and we were like, how are we just magically left out of this? Why do we not count? And she had already had some conversations with other people about starting some sort of group, like just so we could have a little space where we were not bullied, like just a place where we could just all hang out and be together. And then we knew that it hypothetically, like we didn't know of any other school that did it or anything of that, but we knew that it was a thing that some people did. So we're like, it's worth a shot. Let's just see if we get immediately shut down and maybe we can do something. It worked out, thankfully.
Yes, well, I'll never forget the look on your guys' faces when you showed up in the head of yours office. looking very
Pure
frightened.
fear. So afraid.
Just absolute terror. But you wouldn't have known if when you walked in the room that the various rooms that we took over a few months later, you would never have thought that that group of you were so initially nervous and coming from this place of, you know, frustration and neglect, I guess, like how you were feeling it, because it was like you guys had come alive and were comfortable, and every week there were more and more people showing up, and from my point of view anyway, it was a really, really positive thing. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I think if it hadn't been for like Saga, I think my overall experience of secondary school and like my memories of it would be a lot more negative. Like when I look back at it, I think of it as a good time in my life. But if it wasn't for that, it definitely would have just been a nightmare the whole time.
Well, I'm glad there was some silver lining. So the thing that stands out for me, the peak moment in my memory was when we had that morning CPD session, because it was a Tuesday or Thursday morning or something that we used to have. Staff used to have like a CPD based briefing, which was a nightmare at 8 a.m. In the main hall. And I think it was that one. I don't think it was an after school one. I think it was the morning one. Maybe I'm wrong. Do you remember?
Yeah, it was
No.
Tuesday morning.
Tuesday morning. Okay.
Tuesday morning for sure. I could never forget.
For sure. You're very clear in your mind. Excellent. Excellent. And there was, because we went around and around and around of who wanted to actually be a part of this, like who was comfortable enough standing up in front of 100 staff members, some of whom you knew were really supportive, and some of whom you knew would probably have a certain face on the entire time. And how old were you guys?
I think we were probably 15.
Yeah, you're about 15. Most of you were anyway. I don't think any of the younger kids did it. And we went around and around about who's going to do it. Yeah, and some people were like in, and then they were out, and they were in. Like it was a really stressful thing for you guys to do, of course. But there was I don't know, 8 of you standing in a line, like staring down the staff, like it was some sort of battlefront. It was epic. And then there was me and one other member of staff kind of on either side as well to pitch in, and a science teacher who worked with Saga gave a little science background to the people who clearly haven't studied biology since year 6. Yeah. And it was amazing. What was that like for you? Like, what was your memory of that session?
It really felt like it was really surreal. I really felt like we were giving an intervention to like a whole. I was like, I can't believe I have to sit here and teach you to like be respectful and not let people harass us. But it was. I think the thing that drove us the most to do it was frustration, because obviously, like, it was like a really anxiety-inducing. It was really a thing none of us wanted to do, but we were like, if it's not us that tells them, like, because I think it's easy to ignore your boss, but if you ignore the people that you're actually there to work for, that might be a little bit stickier for people. So I think.
And that is what we talked about, because it wasn't, just in case anyone's listening thinking, you know, how dare that horrible head of year make those students do that against their will. Like we had many, many discussions about this, and it was decided as a group that it would be more meaningful for all the reasons you just said. It would be more meaningful coming from the students themselves. So, and those of you that did it definitely made it meaningful. And I think, I mean, I would have loved that opportunity when I was in school, because we didn't have anything. I mean, there was no Section 28 where I lived. It was just a developing country in the Bahamas, developing country with a quote unquote Christian government, definitely in quotation marks. And I went to a private school that could basically do whatever they wanted. So there was nothing like that available for me when I was in high school, when I was growing up, and I would have loved that opportunity. Do you remember that line? I remember you practicing what you were going to say, and you said this, and I almost died. And then you said it out loud, and I thought I was going to explode with like I honestly thought I was going to cry. I was so proud of you when you were listing off Okay, so it started off the way you guys started it, and this was all like collectively decided by the Pride group. Like we did this together. We had a whole bunch of really offensive slurs on the board. So when everyone was coming in, you're laughing now, but this was your idea, collectively your. So when staff came in, they were confronted by all the phrases and all the words that you guys had heard in school or online from other students on the internet. And so it was like forcing us, I say us, I was forcing staff to look at it and confront it and actually see it and read it. And then you explained what it was. I think it was you specifically. You explained what it was and said, every single one of these phrases and every single one of these sentences and every single one of these words are things that we have had directed at us. We hear this every single day. And if we can hear it, why can't you? Because one of your because one of your points, it's all coming back. Yeah, because one of your points was,
I was like, how is this happening? How am I the only person witnessing this?
Yeah, which is a huge problem. Like we're constantly told, staff are constantly told, like, call it out when you hear it, pick it up, don't let it go, don't let it happen. But the selective, and I say this as a teacher, the selective hearing of teachers is second to none. And it is so easy for a staff member who is uncomfortable addressing these things to just pretend they didn't hear it or to quickly cross the room or to, do you know what I mean? And I feel like that was happening to you guys a lot in certain situations anyway. So that was beautiful. And then you did the same thing. I think what Neil was saying as well with the terminology and clarifying terms, that happened too. But it was more just, honestly, it was the absolute guts of you guys to stand there and confront the adults in your lives about it. Was just a beautiful moment. That was genuinely one of my like top proudest moments of the past 14 years. It was excellent. Do you feel it was that you took it and I loved it. So was that, do you feel like it made any difference? This is probably not the answer I want to hear, but do you feel like anything changed?
I mean, I think for us, yes. I think like just the idea of getting like just confronting people with a problem you have with their behavior, like it's bound to stick in people's heads somehow. And I did notice a difference in, people got away with things just, slightly less after we had that, which was, any improvement we deeply, deeply appreciated.
I'm glad you say that on reflection, because at the time when you were like, oh yeah, it's better, I was like, are they just saying that to kind of make themselves feel better about doing that? But okay. Yeah.
Like it wasn't perfect.
Good.
But there was definitely some improvement from, staff members who took that on board and didn't just feel told off by 15-year-olds,
But I mean, that was worth it in itself, as far as I'm concerned. But which was risky. It was a risky thing to do because a lot of staff who are defensive about these things or resistant to taking these kinds of ideas on board might get their backs up even more by 15-year-olds basically having a go at them in the most professional and polite way I've ever seen. But it worked. So I think maybe part of the secret is to actually get people somehow by any means necessary to realize that it is the students that are at the center of this. And if you're in a country that has the Equality Act, and if you're in an institution that is inclusive, then you have to kind of put your own feelings, whatever they are, in a box and do the right thing. Maybe for them. Possibly.
Like if you see a kid getting beat up, just because it's an annoying kid doesn't mean you shouldn't stop them getting beat up. It's the same thing, Like, your opinions don't matter.
No, and I've broken up so many fights, Dante, where I thought in the back of my head, like, I could have let that go on a few seconds longer, but no, I'm the adult here and I'm going to do the right thing. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. If you think of anything else or you want to add anything about what we did, because I know we did we did do a little fair, a little kind of booth thing at some point, but my memory of that is really blurry. I think I was really busy that week. So if you remember anything about that, as we're talking about stuff, just send a text and I'll read it out.
Lovely, Aisha.
All right. Thank you. Bye. Oh, I just cut him off there. Sorry. All right. Neil, how was your staff CPD? Was it a little bit less confrontational?
Yeah, when I was listening to Dante, I mean, first I want to say, the gutsiness and that rebellious nature in Dante was music to my ears. I mean, it's so hard to do when you're 15 in a school, but when you said we kind of just went for it and let's see if we're going to get shut down, that's brilliant. And in the end, it created good memories for Dante and their friends. So that's really good. We didn't have any kind of pushback from it. There were the usual, as you in your conversation there with Dante, there's the usual members of staff who perhaps don't say much and were maybe looking up to the sky a little bit. But when you're exposed to it and you're hearing it from the pupils, as Dante said, it's the most powerful voice you have in the school, because as Dante said, they are the ones who we're there to serve, in a sense, aren't we? So if they're saying that it's bad and it needs changing and you need to listen out more for these slurs or whatever it might be, then that's what we need to do. And even if they might appear a bit disengaged, the staff in those kind of training sessions, they'll leave knowing what they've been told and what they've learned, and then they can go and hopefully apply it to their practice and their everyday.
Yeah, and I did feel that. I felt like people, I mean, the people you're never going to reach, you're never going to reach. But I think 99.9% of people who go into education, we're doing it for the kids. And sometimes we don't always agree with X, Y, or Z that we're being asked or told to do, but we do it because it's in the best interest of the students. So I'm trying to apply that with minimal cognitive dissonance.
And I'll never blame, educators or parents or anybody for perhaps maybe not having the views that we'd want them to have, because we're not fighting parents or teachers. We're fighting a narrative that's come in over the last 10 years or so, where media and politicians have created. We're kind of in a place now, which you alluded to at the start of the show, where transphobia is more prevalent than before. It's like the homophobia of the 80s that we're seeing movements by those who want to divide us, because I think they're scared of what can happen when we are united. Like, the story that Dante told there, that's a really positive action. And I think the more we do of that, that's what we can do from the ground to try and influence people to kind of change their views and for the better.
Absolutely. So there's a specific kind of case of that narrative in the trans panic in particular, and all of this that I want to discuss. Just going to take a very, very quick break, and then we're going to get on to the joys of the pushback that we are getting lately.
Imagine having your own instructional coach available 24/7. Now you can with the Teaching How-Tos platform. This highly personalised social platform empowers busy teachers to learn and apply evidence-based teaching techniques, either independently, working collaboratively with their peers, or with our new AI assistant. The platform features over 160 visual guides to teaching techniques, designed to help you quickly and easily implement high-impact practices that boost student engagement and improve learning outcomes. Join over 200 institutions worldwide that are elevating their teaching practices with the How-To app. No gurus, just practical support anytime you need it. Interested in finding out more? Visit teachinghowtos.com and register for our next webinar.
Empowering education with Easy for You, where innovation meets accessibility. Our subscription-based offering not only equips schools with cutting-edge devices, but revolutionizes the learning experience by eliminating financial barriers, streamlining support, and embracing technology. We're not just providing tools, we're shaping a future where every student can thrive, unburdened by limitations. Easy for You, transforming education, one device at a time. Find out more at www.easyforyou.school.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading. Hi teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculum. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps for good. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
I worked in London for 13 years, which is why, Neil, I'm still in that London union group. I really should have removed myself, but I haven't done it because it's good to make connections and stay there until someone kicks you out. And last summer, I moved up to a city in the East Midlands. So in a different city in the East Midlands, there's been a recent controversy within the Catholic schools. So the Nottingham Diocese released a document called "Precious in My Sight," which I find I'm not even religious, and it still bothers me. And it's basically all about how Catholic schools in the area should be handling issues around LGBTQ students. Even phrasing it that way is disgusting. But it's all about, how schools should handle students who want to change their name or their pronouns, how students should be addressing LGBTQ plus history or pride, and it's honestly, Google it, "Precious in My Sight, Nottingham Diocese, May 2024," and it is really quite upsetting on so many levels for all of our students. But one of their points, as it relates to this particular topic, Pride Month, and why it's obviously was released in May and why it has been making the news in recent weeks, is because they've said, while it's okay that schools have events or assemblies or so on for LGBTQ plus History Month in February from a purely educational box ticking perspective, they should not be recognizing Pride Month in June, because they can't basically, the Catholic Church can't get behind all of the perspectives and the teachings and the everything of Pride Month and what that stands for. And it is really, really upsetting to everyone involved. And I've, oh yeah, this is the thing, right? Thank you, Graham. So we've got a text in from a teacher who knows far more about this than I do, and I think has been involved in some of the union gatherings and discussions around this particular topic, because I do not teach in a Catholic school in Nottingham, and this is not directly related to my day-to-day job. But the actual wording in the document is that it's not to be celebrated. So it can be acknowledged, but it shouldn't be celebrated in any way, which is in itself a little bit vague. Yeah, Graham, if you want to call in and clarify things, because you know far more about this than I do, I will absolutely love that. So before we start going into, before Graham shares any of his kind of insider knowledge, I just want to point out, this is not a one-off scenario. And I think, Neil, you would agree, you've mentioned this multiple times. There is a climate in this country right now, in many countries right now, of panic around LGBTQ plus lives and existences. And I think that panic is directly harming our students. And what's going on in Nottingham is just kind of one little tiny bite of what's going on kind of nationwide. So we've got Graham here. Hiya.
Hi there. How you doing?
Good, thank you. Do you want to clarify some things for me, please?
That's it. I just from my perspective, really, and some of the conversations that I've started having in school, we've known that this guidance was due for some time now, and I knew that the diocese was consulting with the heads and leaders of the trusts and so on, because it covers 3 trusts. School Catholic trusts across the East Midlands. I actually met with the CEO of my trust today, and his comment was that the diocese did not take on board some of what the feedback that the heads were giving, and it's gone ahead and published this without taking on board. And it sounds to me as if very much the heads and the heads of the trust are really trying to be very supportive, and the diocese has gone ahead without taking on board their guidance, and he actually expressed real surprise at the words around Pride Month. That was a complete surprise to him. He was not seeing that. A lot of the other stuff around transgender students, the phrase used, obviously, those questioning their gender. The bit underneath is where it describes it: a compassionate and practical guide for the use in secondary schools. We can leave that there, can't we? The stuff around Pride Month is interesting, as you sort of said. I was speaking to somebody else who works within the trust last week, and it's very much what it's meant to be framing is that we cannot celebrate Pride Month because of Catholic teachings, but recognising teaching about it would be okay. I need to be part of, we need to discuss how we go forward with that. That's something that I want to be working on. The LGBT History Month was interesting. We did do some work on that earlier in the year, and that's something that I know we certainly do need to develop more of. But it is interesting, the timing and the wording in the document is quite unfortunate. It really was not good. There is a lot of activism rooting around this at the moment. There are things that are developing, and I would suggest sort of people, certainly in the East Midlands, get in touch with their sort of local union, particularly LGBT networks, because there are things kind of organising around that. But equally, just nationally, if Nottingham have published this, other dioceses will be looking at it. And I think it's something for all of us to be really keeping a careful eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I was talking to a teacher in a school down south about this recently, and it was that they seem to have barely heard about it. Like, it was kind of not something they thought about, and then B, just genuinely didn't seem concerned. And I was like, this is how it starts. Like, this is just the first.
Absolutely. And there's a lot in there. They put a lot of what's in there is actually the government draft guidance is part of it. So, which is obviously, it's still in draft at the government level, and obviously we don't, depending on what happens on 4th of July, what will happen with that. So actually, this document will have to be updated to take that into account. So that was quite interesting looking through, and it is just literally in their wholesale. So guidance that for other schools is still draft, technically is in here that Catholic schools should follow, which is, that's an interesting area for them to have ventured into. And it speaks of the lack of consultation that has gone around it. I think if they'd been better advised, they might not have gone down that route.
Yeah, it really doesn't read like any sort of collaborative. As you said, so much of it is taken directly from the government and what is meant to be draft guidance. Like, 2 keywords.
No, absolutely. The thing I really want to emphasise, because at the show you've had so much positive stuff, and it's a shame to kind of bring in this negative sort of side to it. Really,
No,
the
we got it.
conversations I've had, certainly with my head and with the head of my trust, is they are phenomenally supportive of doing stuff in school. They want to support our LGBT plus students, and they really want to understand and help them. And this is something that's come very much from the diocese. I think that's a really important thing to say.
Yeah.
That the schools are doing their best, but of course, I see my head teacher, and he's treading this very fine line, wanting to support me and my students and so on, but having to look over his shoulder at the diocese. And and I think that's something I did want to emphasise that, really, because the schools are trying to do some really, really good stuff, and I've been personally very, very well supported by this, by my school and by the trust. And we are needing to work with the diocese. We need to get them to understand why there's so much anger around this, and to see what we can do.
Yeah, thank you so much for that clarification. And it is important to obviously recognize that individual schools are doing a lot of individual schools. I'm so sorry for my cats running around in the background. Individual schools it happens every so often. Individual schools are doing what they can, and there's so much good that's out there. But with all these kind of larger institutional forces at play, it must be, there we go. It must be such a difficult position to be in as a head teacher who is on side and is supportive and wants to do the right thing, but has all of these wider pressures. I absolutely do not envy them in their job. Incredibly difficult. But thank you so much, Graham. Thank you for that.
You're more than welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've only got a few minutes left, and I feel like this is such a big topic. I feel like we've only scratched the surface. But what Neil, would you say is like how should schools move forward in your perspective and experience with recognizing, dare I say, celebrating Pride Month in schools, particularly in our current climate, particularly if for example, a large cohort of parents or the wider community are not particularly supportive? Like how can schools make something work? What should they do?
I mean, firstly, Pride Month is related to History Month, isn't it? LGBT plus History Month.
Mm-hmm.
1969. So to say that they're unrelated and one's better than the other is a rocky road that they're going down. I think it's really important to engage parents and carers and families. They're a big part of the school community, and I think regular and effective engagement with them is really critical to the success of any school activity, but particularly LGBT plus inclusive education, because it might feel unfamiliar to some families, and particularly if they're from a certain religious background. Like we've just heard, it can be difficult for them. So I think connect them to the school, bring them in, talk to them. If you've got local faith groups who might be on side, that might be a good starting point for identifying key people. And I think actively counter the misinformation. Don't ignore it. There's a lot of misinformation and misinformation now, and anti-relationship and sex education groups are targeting faith communities. So I think share curriculum resources with families so that they can understand what it is, what is and isn't being taught, as well as the reasons why. Be open with them and share the evidence of the impacts of homo, bi, transphobic bullying on mental and physical well-being, as well as attainment levels. I think it's really important to do that and be open with families on that and get them on side and show the positive effects of all of what we've been talking about in this hour, what that can have on staff and pupils, to kind of counter this, frankly, rubbish misinformation that we're getting from those other sections in society.
Absolutely. And I think also from a individual teacher's point of view, if you're finding it difficult, or you feel alone, or you feel like you're alone in this, or it seems like a battle, honestly, what Graham said, reach out to your union. There are are so many groups out there, there's such a supportive community of people that are in similar situations or have been in similar situations. And there are conferences, there's training, there are workshops, there are just other human beings that can share ideas and work with you, so you don't feel like you're kind of alone in a sea of resistance, I guess. I feel like that was really important for me anyway, just to kind of feel a little bit more confident in what I was doing and knowing that I was approaching things the right way and doing the right thing. I think that's really helpful for individual teachers as well. I'm sure you agree, because I know you're very involved.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, someone put on the chat earlier, I think, that they don't feel safe in what they can do in their school, and I was thinking about that earlier, and I would say join the NEU. There are other unions out there, but you know, the NEU is very positive in terms of what they do with this kind of thing. If they haven't already, it's a very welcoming LGBT+ network. You're never alone, so you know, try to reach out to people, and we can try to work through it.
Yeah, and I think we need to keep in mind, if it feels difficult or it feels challenging or feel like you're in a losing battle, then you know, just I always remember that moment. Me personally, I remember that moment that Dante and I were talking about, that CPD moment, because honestly, it was one of the highlights of my life. It was beautiful. Just find something to like remember why we're doing this and the significance of it and the importance of it, because it matters so much. Sorry?
Have some fun and celebrate it where you can as well.
Yeah.
It's a difficult time sometimes, and I think we've got to kind of club together and do what we can to be proud of who we are and what we're doing in schools, and you know, counter everything else, because it's, you know, that's what matters in the end.
Absolutely. Right. Well, it is 10 p.m. And Dante's still listening, and it is 11 p.m. It's all right for some people to be on holiday in Italy. So we're going to wrap things up. But is there anything else you wanted to add? I think I've said pretty much everything I want to say.
Yeah, no, covered everything. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on and for staying up late on a Monday to share your wisdom and experience. It's been really good.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No, lovely. Thank you for being here, and thank you, Graham, for calling in as well, and thank you, Dante, for spending your holiday reliving what was hopefully not too traumatic secondary school memories. And thank you to all of our listeners. Have a lovely evening or day or morning, whatever time it is for you now.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.